That's true.
Yeah, you kind of turned over a new leaf here, boss. I like it. Don't up early.
I had to at least be seated. It couldn't be panning into the microphone. All right. Oh, my phone's a little ahead. All right. Good evening, everybody. I would like to call the April Plan Commission meeting to order at 6:30. Welcome tonight. If we could start by standing and saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge of Allegiance. All right, everybody up front, get their mics on. All right. Can the folks on Zoom hear us? Excellent. All right. Andy, can you lead us with a roll call, please?
Yep. Jason Stein.
Here.
Brittany Layton.
Here.
Amanda Jeschke.
Here.
Nathan Sturdevant.
Here.
Cheyenne Hoffa.
Here.
Jason Snyder.
Oh, here. I've got
Stein is here as well.
Oh, Dan Justice.
Here.
All right. Thank you, Andy. All right. I would like to ask the commission to consider approving the minutes for the February 2023 meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review?
Motion to approve the minutes.
All right. I like it. We got a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, tonight before us, we have one new case, new business. It's case number STP 01-2023-407-421 East Broadway mixed use site plan. Before we dive into this, I want to give just a quick overview, kind of the expectations and the flow for how this will run tonight. First, we'll have Adam, our planning and building director, give us a presentation and overview. Then we will ask the petitioner to come up and speak on behalf of the project. Then we will offer those in the audience to speak on behalf of or against the proposal. Then we will have time for government officials to speak. Then we will ask the petitioner to come back up to answer any questions, rebuttals that may have come up in between then. And then we will bring it for a vote for the group. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Adam to give us the presentation.
All right, thank you. The only case on our agenda tonight is 407-421 East Broadway mixed use project. All right, so more specifically, you're being asked tonight to consider a petition by Gerpertop Gill of NZG Realty LLC. He's the owner, to approve a concept site plan, concept elevations, concept landscaping, and concept lighting for two proposed mixed-use buildings on a 0.71 acre site at 407 and 421 West Broadway. Of course, it's also US 36, State Route 67. Each building would be 3 stories, and the west building is about 5,100 square feet that's being planned. It would include 8 market rate apartments above 1,700 square feet of retail. And then there's an east building, which is about 6,700 square feet. and that would include 13 live work market rate apartments. There'd be work offices on the first floor. As some of you know, this site has some history to it, some recent history. It was the site of a previously proposed Forza development project. 407 East Broadway, which is the west parcel, is the site of a previously proposed new Subway restaurant. And then 421 East Broadway, the east parcel, is the site of a previously proposed Indiana Farm Bureau insurance building. So none of those projects would go through or are planned to go through. As you can see here, here is the property in question with the blue outline, star in the middle. Over to the west is the Speedway gas station. To the north is the recently remodeled building that's known as Restoration Counseling. And then over on the right-hand side of the screen to the east is a do-it-yourself car wash. And as we move along, you can just see, we call an oblique aerial of the property in question. We can always refer back to these as needed. If we look at the zoning map, you can see that these properties are zoned community commercial, CC. And as is everything in red on this map, the green to the south is a grandfather designation of business-3. And then the areas in beige or yellow that you see is residential 3.5. So here is the site plan. I'm sure we'll be able to flip back to this. You can see the two buildings, and there is a public alley that goes down the middle. So in terms of the staff review, the analysis, these are some of the typical review items that we analyzed per the zoning ordinance. And it should be noted that these properties are within the Broadway Main overlay. So there are some unique standards to this area of town that don't apply townwide. So first, in looking at the access to the project would be via Broadway. There'd be a right-in, right-out only at that alley that I showed. That would be subject to NDOT coordination and approval. There's also access via Walnut Street and Elm Street, and there's a maximum 28-foot wide driveway exit onto Walnut Street. We'll verify that specifically during the construction plan review. In terms of access, based on concerns from neighbors, would not be providing access to the alley. And wanted to note that NDOT is in the process of installing a 12-foot wide concrete sidewalk along Broadway this year within existing right-of-way. This here, just for reference, is showing the NDOT Broadway plan. It's a little bit different from what you see in the right-of-way plans for this particular project, but this would supersede it. So again, it's showing a 12-foot wide sidewalk. It is showing a full access drive, but they're proposing right in, right out. And that decision will ultimately be up to NDOT, and we have coordinated with them on this project. They haven't said one way or the other if they'd prefer, typically they would want either no access or right in, right out. So we don't anticipate that they would have any issues with doing so for this middle driveway here. In terms of the setbacks, that's another item, of course, that we take a look at. There's a 0-foot building setback along Broadway. For the zoning ordinance, 100% maximum lot coverage is allowed in that Broadway Main overlay, and they're providing 81%, so they meet that. They are providing the required 50-foot half-street right-of-way along Broadway, and they would dedicate to the town any right-of-way in that 50-foot area that isn't currently dedicated right-of-way. And then the setback along Walnut and Elm, the code requirement is a minimum of 15 feet from the edge of the curb, and they have provided that. Moving along, if we take a look at the parking location, the parking is being provided in the rear of the site in keeping with the Broadway Main overlay. And this diagram is taken right out of the ordinance. You can see that it is very similar to what they're proposing. In terms of parking itself, they're showing 33 parking spaces, and that would include 11 covered parking spaces for the apartments and then 2 handicap spaces. The amount that's required is they would need to have 1.5 spaces per 1 apartment required. They have 21 apartments, so they need to have 32 spaces. And then for the retail, as I mentioned, they're planning 1,700 square feet of retail. They'd have to provide anywhere from 3 to 8 spaces. So they are providing, in this case, shared parking. Some of the retail, of course, will not be open at the time the apartments are full, and they are very close in terms of the numbers. So again, they are showing 33 parking spaces, and the minimum space dimensions do meet the ordinance. Minor detail, parking space bumpers and bicycle parking will need to be provided near the sidewalk areas, and they'll show that on the final civil plans, and we'll review that if it goes to that stage. Here is the concept landscape plan that was prepared in accordance with the zoning ordinance. Again, we can always come back to these documents. In terms of landscaping and amenities, they are providing shrubs and trees around the site, including within the parking area as required. The parking lot is being screened with landscaping as required. They are providing building foundation plantings as required, and no invasive plants are being used. And then in terms of screening, although it's not required, an opaque fence will be provided along the northwest property line to provide screening to the adjacent residential property to the north. And the dumpster will also be screened. And although it's not required, some landscaping will be provided near the enclosure as well. Here is the concept lighting plan. You can see the 2 different types of fixtures that they're looking to implement. Pretty common for commercial development, and most importantly, it does meet the ordinance. The parking lot that's shown on the plan would have 15-foot tall poles, and they would be fully shielded, meaning that light is pointed downward per that fixture that's on the upper left. And then all building mounted lighting must point downward, and the photometric plan that you saw is assumes mounting them at 10 feet on the building. Most importantly, there would be no light spillover onto adjacent properties per that lighting plan and those photometric calculations. In terms of drainage, as that's a typical concern that comes up at these meetings by the public, the county surveyor's office requires an underground stormwater detention system. And that could be via a system of oversized pipes. So that will be more fully analyzed if they move forward to the final civil plan and construction documents. Here are the concept building elevations. This is a view from Broadway looking north. So you can see the types of materials that they're using. Always come back to this. As I mentioned, it's a 3-story building, and it would be 40 feet tall, so it is in conformance with the ordinance. Again, each of these different items that I list here are elements of the zoning ordinance and how the project is in compliance with it. It has a human scale and pedestrian accessibility. Roof-mounted mechanical equipment needs to be screened from public view. That is something that we will confirm on the final building plans. Again, in keeping with the code, at least 50% of the ground floor is masonry. They have a minimum of 3 different materials, which would include brick, concrete, and fiber cement panels. And no more than 33% of any facade is fiber cement panels in accordance with the ordinance. They are showing glass on at least 60% of the front first floor facade in accordance with the ordinance. No windowless elevations. They are showing building articulation. There are some balconies that are inset into the building. They're also showing building cornice architectural detailing. And much like the parking diagram, this is an actual diagram that was taken out of the Broadway Main overlay district. And you can see that it is fairly similar to the type of building that they're proposing. So very consistent in that manner. In terms of the community response, all the public hearing requirements have been completed. That included newspaper publication, posting of a public hearing sign, and mailing to nearby property owners. At the time we put the staff report together, we weren't aware of any formal remonstrance, although I think maybe online there may have been some comments. Staff directed the applicant to meet with some neighbors who had been upset by the Forza project to ensure their concerns were being addressed. And the applicant did meet with some of those residents. And as a result of that, some of the items that were implemented in the design is, again, no access onto the alley. And that really stemmed from concerns by the neighbors with traffic and headlights heading northbound out of the project. So they decided to cut that off. They also would be providing market rate apartments, and there was only 21 units that they're showing, which is much fewer than proposed by Forza. I think Forza, I don't recall exactly, maybe 50 units in that range. They are providing first floor commercial in the west building. And the amenities park area may be provided near the east building north on the north side again of that east building. So with that, my recommendation would be to approve all 4 concept documents. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to address them. Thank you.
Questions for Adam?
Yeah, I have a question, Adam. What would you remind us what in the code, what's our maximum height for these structures?
I believe it's 45 feet, and then there was a 15-foot allowance for
Like the mechanicals?
mechanicals.
Okay, that was my question.
Mhm.
Thank you.
On the print, Adam, where's the dumpster gonna be?
If you can see the mouse here, the dumpster enclosure is right here near the alley.
Adam,
Mhm.
looking at that, based on that second building there, those spaces underneath, those are parking spaces, correct?
Correct, where the.
How is
where
that
the-
last space
where
going to
the-
be able to back out if there's a dumpster right there?
Well, the dumpster wall is where the thick black line is. And then these dimensions underneath it's showing the dimensions of that area. So that vehicle would be able to back up.
So that 10-foot bump out there, that's not going to be any kind of gate opening or any other kind of structure there that would block that person from parking in there?
Well, I mean, the gate would be required to be closed. Obviously, there could be a scenario by which the gate would have to open in order to gain access to it, but it would need to be closed in order to conceal the waste, and then again, to make sure people can back out of that space.
But if the gate's closed, how do the apartment residents put their trash in the dumpster?
Well, I mean, that's probably a technical issue that would be addressed further down the road. Having lived in a similar type of apartment complex at one point in life, you just open up the gate and throw it in the bin. And then close the gate.
We'll have time for you as soon as we wrap up this.
Along with that, Adam, I just got a really quick follow-up. Do we have anything in our ordinances or code or whatever that per square footage or units in a building that we have to have so much area for dumpsters? Like, do we have 1, 2? I mean,
We do not.
okay.
What are we looking at square footage wise per unit?
I'll defer to the applicant for that answer.
Adam, will there still be street parking on Walnut?
I would say to be determined. Let's put it this way, there would be no change from what's there right now. So if it's allowed now, then presumably it would be allowed
Okay,
with the
'cause we
new
got-
development.
2 residents right behind this property that use that street parking. We got
Yeah.
Speedway gas station, that parking there, parking there.
And I would assume that there's probably a bit of a buffer from Broadway as to how close vehicles could encroach. But to answer your question, yeah, as long as it's allowed today, we weren't planning on changing it one way or the other.
And then I got a quick question.
Mhm.
I don't know if this be you or Alex, since I own both residents behind this. Do I need to step down off of this? I can still ask questions about voting wise.
Yeah, did you say you own the property right north of the fence?
I own both of them.
Yeah.
behind there.
I mean, maybe Alex can chime in. My take would be that it would probably be best to
I can
not
still ask
vote on
questions,
that.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree. There's no legal conflict of interest, which would require direct, financial interest that you have in there, but it's close, right? Typically, and Adam and I have dealt with this many times over the years. It's close, right? So you own property. What happens on the properties that are immediately next to yours could impact the financial well-being of your properties. So certainly welcome to ask questions. You're not legally required to recuse yourself, but generally we think that it's good practice just to avoid any appearance of impropriety or bias.
Thank you.
So circling back real quick on parking. So we don't know for sure whether or not Walnut or Elm has on-street parking. That was going to be something I was curious
There is on-street parking now.
on both. Or at least on Walnut there is. Okay,
I'm not for sure.
because with the tight parking, that gives another
Pretty sure.
avenue for potentially the commercial in the west building.
I would say this, every time I'm at Speedway, there are cars parked up and down Walnut Street, and it looks like it's already occupied by the residents who are there and the customers that frequent the Speedway.
Okay.
And Adam, does the current zoning call for multifamily, or do we have to do a variance for that?
The current zoning allows for multifamily in the zoning district.
We don't need to do any kind of ground studies on this, do we, because of our concerns in the past?
Ground studies in terms of environmental.
Yes, I know we've had concerns in the past about previous contaminations because of the businesses that used to be in the town.
Here in Indiana, we don't, as a staff, typically require that to be done. If an environmental study is done, like let's say a phase 1 at a minimum environmental study, it's usually something that the property owner wants or needs to get in order to get financing for the project. And certainly, I don't know the history. I don't know if a phase one has been done or not on the property. I'd have to defer to the applicant. But lastly, on that topic is if an environmental assessment needs to be done, the town does have access to EPA grant money that would pay for phase one to be done on the property.
All right, I'll just chime in just for the edification of the commission and the public as much as they care. As Adam said, in Indiana, actually, there's a statute that says if there's an agency that is charged with governing, environmental cleanups, remediation, reporting spills, and we have that, right? It's IDEM, the Department of Environmental Management. Then the local municipalities actually can't require those types of things or get involved. We can use EPA grants to help, provide financial assistance if someone approaches the town regarding a phase one, or if, for example, the redevelopment commission is interested in acquiring property that may have environmental issues, we can, pursue that way. But in this situation, it's really those issues, those environmental issues or concerns, whether to do a phase one, phase two, so forth, are really just left to the private parties.
Thank you, Alex. Any other questions from the commission for Adam?
Yeah, just real quick, Adam, just to clarify, so the commercial spaces that they're offering are just on one building, is that correct? Or is it both?
Correct, the building on the left.
Okay.
And then the building on the right is what's called live work. And so there would be offices on the first floor, but they'd basically be home offices.
Gotcha. And do we have an idea of what kind of retail they're trying to appeal to? So, that's just not a lot of parking spaces. So if it were to be like, say, a restaurant or something that's going to get a lot of foot traffic, that could be a concern as well as parking.
I would defer to the applicant on that one.
Are these 2-bedroom apartments or all 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms?
I'll defer to the applicant.
Okay, so just to be clear, the live work home office, the intent of this right side building will be to rent out the apartment spaces and then further rent the office spaces to people who remote work or telecommute. Is that the intent?
I believe it's all part of one unit. That buyer renter would do both of those things, but again, I'll have to defer to the applicant on that
Okay.
specific market question.
Adam, just out of curiosity, the east building is 6,700 square feet.
Mhm.
That includes 13 apartments and workspace on the first floor.
Correct. It
Okay,
includes the
It in-
workspace,
includes the workspace.
right?
Because if I'm doing my math right, 6,700 square feet divided by 13, like just including that all, is only 515 square feet.
My guess is that's per floor. That's
Again,
gotta be the
I'll
top
defer to-
down.
I'll defer to the applicant.
Okay.
For some of that,
Okay.
the spatial questions.
All right, anything else for Adam? Otherwise, I think we will invite the petitioner up. If you would, if you could come to the microphone, say and spell your name and how you represent this case, please.
Good evening, Andy Wirt, W-E-R-T. Mr. President, members of the commission, for the record, I'm a land use professional with law firm of Churchill and Antrim at 2 North 9th Street in Noblesville. Here tonight on behalf of our client, Gill, who owns NZG Realty. Mr. Gill has significant real estate and development experience, including a 12-year ownership of the Subway restaurant just down the street. Attending virtually tonight via Teams are members of our design team, Greg Bryan from Roger Ward Engineering and Tara Anker of Peterson Architecture. NZG has purchased the currently vacant property 407-421 East Broadway Street. As you know, this has been the site of several different proposals over the last few years. Mr. Gill is now proposing to develop 2 multi-use buildings on this site. Adam, as usual, has given a very comprehensive summary of the project. I'm going to try not to repeat anything. Presently, there are 2 separate parcels. We're proposing to vacate the alley that separates the 2 and combine the parcels into 1. Both buildings, again, 3 stories in height. The 407 building would feature retail on the ground floor, 8 apartment units for a total of 5,400 square feet. And then the 421 building, 6,700 square feet total, 3 work-live units on the ground floor, and then 10 apartments on the top 2 floors. So a total of 21 living units. These are, I would describe them as boutique apartments. Most of the units will have 3 bedrooms. They will offer many high-end options that the market is demanding at this time. As Adam has noted, also 33 parking spaces being proposed, including 11 that are in enclosed garages. Storm drainage will be detained in an underground pipe and outlet to a pipe that is being installed as part of the US 36 reconstruction. We've been working closely with Adam on this. Many of his suggestions on the details. We've also met, as was stated, with some of the residents who live in the neighborhood to the north. From an architecture standpoint, we're proposing a building that we believe presents an exceptional front face to Broadway Street. One that reflects and enhances the unique aspects of downtown Fortville, but we're also providing 360-degree architecture. It looks good all the way, all 4 sides, particularly on the north side that is most visible to our residential neighbors. So with the architecture, the landscaping, and fencing that we're proposing, we believe we've got a nice transitional use here. The proposed closure of the alley is another measure we're taking to control traffic, and again, out of respect for the neighborhood. We are not placing buildings over that, but there will be a right in, right out access that we've gotten preliminary okay from NDOT for at the end of that existing alley. Then at the terminus would be, as you've seen, the dumpster, and then there will be a wall behind that. Again, we're before you tonight for site plan approval. We're not asking for any variances. We have adhered strictly to the Broadway main overlay design standards. We're excited about this project. We believe it'll be a real asset to downtown Fortville. I'm going to conclude my introduction at this point and let you ask questions.
All right, any questions? What did you say the average size per unit was going to be?
I'm going to have to defer to Gil on that one.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Gerpatop Gill. I'm the petitioner. So per floor, 6,700 square feet is what we're looking at. They would be tiny otherwise. So just to clear that up, the dumpster, we haven't figured out exactly where that's going to be placed. I'm going to just kind of point a little bit, but we're hoping that we can work out something where the alley is closed back there and the dumpster is back there, kind of out of everybody's way. That's the goal. We'll see what happens, but it'll be out of people's way. We won't block anybody in. The majority of the apartments are going to be 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, and we purposely targeted that because we're such a small development, right? 21 units isn't a whole lot of units. So we wanted to target the segment of the population that could afford to pay a little bit more in rent so that we can kind of get some money back out of the project. We also didn't want to target single bedrooms because we just thought it wouldn't bring the town type of folks that I think the town wants. So we wanted to target the 2- and 3-bedroom for that. The work-live space, just being in real retail myself, that's something that's really, really, I want to use the right word here, but in demand. So basically what happens is you have a garage, you drive into your garage and you open a door into your apartment, into your house, and you walk into what's going to be, it's not very big, but it's a home office on the main level. Okay. So it's your personal home office. So that would target young professionals, people that maybe have a lot of stay-at-home jobs. You know, COVID's driven that a ton. So people that may bike to downtown, spend money here. That's kind of the concept for those. You would walk up another set of stairs and then you would get to your living area, your bedroom, your kitchen, your living room, et cetera, et cetera. So first floor, your garage, you walk in, you got an office, another set of stairs takes you upstairs. You have a kid that turns into a toy room. If it's my kids, they tear it up, but that's neither here nor there. We haven't had enough discussions because I've been trying to work pretty darn hard to get these plans together for you folks. But we haven't had enough conversations with, and I believe she's on the team's meeting, but I need to have more conversations with the lady that is directly to the north of me on the east building to see, what the town, I think, wants to vacate as much as the alley as possible, just based on my conversations with Adam and based on the conversations with folks in the community. And, I wouldn't own all of it, so I would need her help to vacate as far up as you guys wanted. So, and the farther up it goes, the better for community because we cut it off, right? And I think everybody wants that alley to be cut off. So, yeah, that's where we're at. 900 to 1,300 square feet is kind of going to be our target. We haven't gotten to the internal guts of it yet, just because there's so much that goes into this, but we will get into the guts of it as next week I'm supposed to meet with the architect to start discussing what we want the insides to look like. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So these work live offices, the ones you're saying, like you park in the garage, you go through your door and your lower level is your working space. And then you said, or it could end up being converted to a kid's storeroom. That's going to have retail glass front.
No, no, it's not going to. Can you go back to the drawings of it? So these drawings are very preliminary, right? We're not done here, but I think for the purpose of time, the architects just tried to pack what we have here to here. That's not what the outside of this building will look like. It'll look more like a house. So imagine smaller windows and blinds. It'll be more of that nature. I think we'll have more doors as well to get people in and out of their house on the first floor as well.
Okay, so they're going to look more like townhouses on the first floor then.
Yeah, that's a good way to envision.
Okay.
But they definitely won't look like a commercial space.
All right, I've got a couple of questions. The building that has the live work units in it, only those apartments that are on the first floor, if you will, not the ground level, but the first floor, get to utilize a live work?
Yeah, those are in there. That's enclosed into their living space. Yeah,
So if you're on the second, whatever.
you have no access to it.
Then you have no
No,
access to it.
not yours.
So of this, I don't know, this east building, it has, what did we say, 13 of the 13 apartments? How many of those are the live
3.
work? 3?
Yep, ground floor will have 3. Do you have the kind of blueprint drawing that we had where it showed second floor, third floor?
I don't.
Okay, but it's somewhere in the packet of information we sent. But
Okay,
so
that's fine. I'm just trying to wrap my head around
yeah, is
the guts of it.
yeah. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
That's okay.
Give me
Let's see, I had a second question. I don't know, might circle back around.
Can you detail a little bit the expectation for the commercial use?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And then Jason asked the question. So we're targeting folks that that would use the space at separate times from the apartments, right? Folks in the apartments are going to go to work. So we're going to target people like insurance agent, real estate agents, bakeries, things that close super early, right? So, folks that are out of there at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. That's our intent. We don't want to. I care about this property, right? This is how I'm going to provide for my family. This is how I provide for my family. So we don't want to mess. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that fits in the community, something that people can be happy with, something that hell, I can be proud of, So we're not looking to have a mess here. We'd like to, and another thing about this not being a huge development, we can be patient with who we choose to go in there. It doesn't necessarily have to be, oh my God, right away, let's get somebody in there. You know, this isn't a massive development. In the grand scheme of things, it's pretty small. So I think we'll have the flexibility to be a little bit more patient of who we choose to go in there.
Excellent.
Okay, quick question on the parking. You guys said you have 33 parking spaces, 21 units of apartments, correct? So most of the apartments are 3 bedrooms or
Yeah,
bedrooms?
so I don't know who said most, but it's going to be a split between 2 and 3. We haven't figured out the cut up yet. So,
Okay.
but it's
So
21 units.
Are you guys looking at 1 vehicle per
I
apartment?
think
or-
1.5 is the ordinance and we fit in that.
And then you're bringing in retail, bakery or whatever, there are many cars coming in. I mean, okay, the numbers don't look right to me on the parking.
So
I mean,
again, with
most tenants of my tenants here in town have 2 or 3 cars. You know,
sure,
in a 3-bedroom home, so.
sure.
Right.
I mean, we fit to what the ordinance asks for.
Right.
We did about everything I think possible to fit all the standards and not ask for any variances and fit with what the code is. And I hear what you're saying, but I think that's why we're purposely going to target commercial spaces that'll be out of there. You know, things that I'm thinking of are like, these are things that I'm thinking of. I don't want anybody to think that I've approached anybody. I haven't, but things that I think of are like UPS store, small square footage. They get in and out of there. They're closed on the weekends. They're franchised. They don't take up a ton of space.
So
Again,
that's in a perfect world, right?
sure. I wish the world was perfect.
So if all of those spaces are, so if we have people using the spaces for retail and the residents come home and there's no place to park, is it expected that they'll take the overflow like on the street parking on Walnut and Elm? Because Adam, can you guarantee that that street parking is going to remain
The street parking on Walnut?
on Walnut and Elm Street?
I mean, I can't guarantee anything. It's not, I don't make the decision on who's allowed to park or not allowed to park there. It's up to the Public Works Department.
I mean, my question is, what happens if one of these residents comes home and doesn't have a space to park in? Where do they go? What do they do?
As you said, in a perfect world, the commercial spaces aren't being used when these folks are coming home. I get it. That's not a perfect world, but our intent would be to solve those issues as much as possible. And if that means
I like the project. I think it looks good and they're like that, but I'm just.
your vote doesn't count, man.
It can.
I'm just kidding.
You can slam a house right there.
Is there, oh, go ahead.
Say, I also have concerns about the parking. You know, I myself have issues with my rheumatoid arthritis. And so parking is an issue that's very important to me personally. When I can't find a parking spot that's close by to where I'm going, I will often just cancel my plans and go home because I can't walk very long distances. My hips will give out on me.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine how frustrating it could be for someone who comes home and whether or not they have a handicap parking permit that will allow them to park in a disabled parking spot or not, whether they may just be having a really hard day or something and they come home and they can't find a parking spot. how devastating that would be. And if they have, you know, I'm a mother of 4 and I have young kids, I have older kids. But when my kids are not cooperating with me, and I can imagine having to park far away and drag all of my kids home. And if it's raining out or snowing out, it's not cooperating. I mean, I can just imagine this firestorm of events and having to get them home through it.
Yep.
I know that what you say about living in a perfect world, but if there's just simply not parking available that's near where home is your safe space, it's not just an inconvenience, it's the worst thing imaginable for someone.
To address a little bit of that, because I agree.
Yeah.
with you. My father had dementia. He passed away from dementia. So the last 11 years, it was super difficult for us. And so I understand those concerns. My mother-in-law has a heart problem. We can't park far away either. We have some handicap parking. Here's how the bottom floor here, where someone like that would probably want to live. They have reserved garage parking spaces for them. So that handles their concern. The next level, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more garage spots there. So we have 13 garage spots dedicated to apartment folks. So I understand there's 21 units, but we tried to be mindful of that as well and dedicate at least 13 cars that can get inside.
And I'm assuming those come at a premium cost.
I would assume that too, yeah.
Because they're enclosed, right? They have
Yes,
like a
ma'am.
garage.
They're not garage ports, they're
Yeah.
garages that for security, people would give in. So yeah.
So hearing the concern, is there any consideration to restricting the number of saying, you know, resident parking,
Yeah,
putting that kind of thing up and saying, you know, maybe we can only have, what do we say, 3 to 8 spaces were shown there, that we limit the amount of parking that can be available to.
I think that's a great point. And while Brittany was talking, that was something that crossed my mind as well. You know, we'll dive into what signs look like saying, you know, after X, you know, whether X is 3 or whether X is 4, this is for resident parking only. Tow away zone, you know, Garner's is right up the street. I think they'd be happy with us. So I think that's a great idea. I don't want to be a problem for folks.
Sure.
We want to work on solutions. And we'll do our damnedest to do that, but
Yeah.
you know, we won't be able to please everybody. I know that as well.
Thinking about the parking issue just a little bit more, that there's a little bit more that can be done here.
Work on it, love to play with thoughts, but you know, we tried to fit as many ordinance points as possible. So we did that with this as well.
So going back to what we talked about with your work live spaces.
Yes, sir.
So 2 questions. Did the design firm do any research on the town aesthetic when they designed these? And second, how accurate are these visuals? I mean, if we're talking about this east building, the ground floor is completely inaccurate. How much, I mean, to be blunt, how much faith can we put in these visuals that this is what it's going to look like?
So this is very preliminary. This is our first set, right? We wanted to present these to you so we could get feedback and go back to the drawing board. We would like it to look like this. There's differences personally I want as well, but I'm going to wait for feedback from everybody and kind of go through it. But, you know, I'd like to break up some of the brick running the, what is that, walnut? I'd like to break up some of the brick on the first floor, running up walnut, because I think it would look better, especially because they're commercial spaces and not somebody's house. So yeah, I think this gives a very good depiction of where we're at, but yeah, I wish I would have presented a better.
I'll be honest.
Front.
I feel like this particular architecture just doesn't match with a lot of the town. I feel like it just needs something a little bit more.
Open options. I'd love to discuss it, you know, if it's financially, you know, if it's financially reasonable. We're not trying to build a cheap product. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Yeah.
But if it's financially reasonable, we'd be all ears for what you guys would like to see, what the community would like to see. But the folks that did this, Peterson Architecture, I mean, they build all in small towns all across the state. They were somebody that the town actually said was someone that's done good projects with Fortville in the past. So that's why we used them.
Because I mean, my only concern, if we're looking at northwest elevation, building 1 on diagram A202, right there, that lower right-hand corner, I mean, that looks like containerized housing. I mean, you've got your two balconies, certainly, but I'm going to guess that the remainder of that is all flat surface. There's no shutters or any other kind of design element, and that's likely going to be all of the fiber cement, where it's going to be a flat, like designless space. And it's, like I said, it just starts to come off like containerized housing, which if this and the front side are going to be what are on Broadway, which is what people driving through the town see, it becomes very relevant to the discussion. And, that's where my other concerns come in about, the accuracy of these preliminary drawings. Like, we're being asked to vote to approve a site plan on something that we're not exactly sure we know what it looks like.
So these buildings are accurate. As far as the design of them, those can always be played with, right? What we need it to look like, what colors we'd want it to be, how we want something to poke out, or how, but I think this is the so I think there's some breakup. But again, I don't think these are inaccurate. I do think that they were presented so we can have a conversation on design.
And we could approve like the site plan and landscaping plan without approving the elevations, and he could come back for those, or.
Yeah, I would say you have a few different options. So first, if you were to approve the concept building elevations here tonight as is, then as a staff member, we would expect them to build pretty close to that, to what you're seeing. In fact, and if there were any major deviations, then we would take it back to, if there were minor deviations and it doesn't look substantially different, then we have a little bit of latitude as staff to do that. But I think if the applicant wants to go in a very different direction than what you see, then you could always table that element of it and have them come back for it. But the bottom line is what they're showing here today should be procedurally pretty close to what they are intending on building.
Unfortunately, we're just talking about a lot of shoulds, and we hope it will, and we think it will. I mean, there's a whole lot of vaguality here for something that's going to sit right on the main thoroughfare. And before I vote up or down on this, I'd like to know exactly what it is I'm voting for.
And if you're talking about the other building going to look different than what we're showing here, I think it might be wise to table this for another time.
Adam, if we're just voting on the concept, will we have an opportunity, the Plan Commission have an opportunity to see what it gets morphed or tweaked into? Or once we approve the concept elevation, then it's staff then that moves forward?
Correct. It's the latter. So I would say that, again, there's a few different ways of doing it. If you were comfortable with the rest of the project in terms of the other 3 documents, you could approve those and put an indefinite hold on the elevations until it sounds like flesh out the concepts a little bit more. That's an option.
It would be really helpful if you do that, though, to give me ideas of what you want. It's hard to just throw darts, right? We love to get what your ideas are and what the community's ideas are, but what are they?
Well, and that's kind of, and part of that is that's where you need to lean on the design firm that you're leveraging here. Cause I'm gonna be honest with you, man, this doesn't look anything like what would go in our town, especially right here on the main thoroughfare. And I think that your design firm is kind of bears a brunt of responsibility to that. There should have been at least some preliminary research into the town aesthetic. And it doesn't look like there was any. So I think
They're following all of our standards.
Yeah, I'm
We have
pretty
had
much
many
on.
people come through here and ask for cheaper building materials to go outside of our standards to do, he's followed all of the standards that are set forth, which I think is commendable because we do have pretty high standards, and we've had many people come through and seek out cheaper materials, have sought funds for market rate apartment as well from the town, whether TIF district or the otherwise. He's come through and has provided basically exactly what we are asking for.
And what the town displays in the material provided to us.
So I'm gonna, in the interest of time, because we're kind of circling the drain here on this particular issue. I think we can hash this out as a commission when we get ready to vote. But we aren't kind of bringing up anything new. I think it's worthwhile to move on. I appreciate you coming up and talking with us.
Yep, thank you.
At this time, I would like to,
I have one more question. for you,
oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry. Almost wanted,
On the east building or the west building, you have a fence back in the back here.
Up here,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is the east building gonna have a fence back here or?
Yeah, so I think with another business back there, nobody said that they would appreciate one back there.
What size of fence are you talking about?
Probably six, with this last project, we were talking about a 6 or 7 foot white fence. That would kind of stop the lights going into houses behind us. And from Mr. Brand, I think one of the biggest concern was making sure we don't have lights in his house, and we purposely put a dumpster there, and we purposely cut that alley off as much as we're allowed to help with that. So yep, we tried.
all righty. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, at this time, I would like to welcome up anybody that would like to speak for or against the project. Please come to the microphone, say and spell your name, and give us your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Jason Ratliff. I'm a resident in the area with community interests. I have some concerns about this project. I have a concern. My family sold this prime property 13 years ago. It was cleaned from a total site of 3 houses and 1 commercial building. The town used to have a need for a video store. That one was one of 2 that was here in this town. The site was cleared except for 1 house. It was bought by a person in this town who also had a place on this town board. So far, no one has been able to develop the clean site. However, the last house has been redesigned and allowed to change use from a single-family home to a restoration counseling business. It's now separate from this site, but it was the family's property. I'm concerned that a project that fits all of the zoning codes in respect without variance, including parking demands and density applications, which meets the town planning director's stated approval. I'm concerned that this board is not ready to approve anything on this property, even though it fits the zoning and the code that you have. I'm concerned that it will stagnate another 13 years, if not longer. I'm concerned that there will be no sufficient tax collections for another 13 years, and that there will be no improvements to the subject site 407 I think 421 East Broadway. I know Gil to have a passion for this town. He's a successful businessman and entrepreneur. He dedicates himself in many ways. One way as a participant in youth sports, guidance through children, and I welcome this project. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to come up? Speak for or against?
I'm online. Can I speak?
Just 1 second. We've got someone coming up to the microphone and then we will jump right over to you.
Hello, my name is Dave Beatson, Beatson. I live a block from this project. I think that'd be a good fit there if everything works well. I have a lot of questions after listening to, I'm gonna call him Mr. Gill, because good man. I looked it up on the web and is there an ask? Wait a minute, is there an ask from the town monetarily from the developer here, or is it all his money, or are we going to be having a stake in it?
I believe that would have to be a question for Adam because I'm not aware of any.
Okay,
And the developer appears to be shaking his head for the written record.
he's shaking his head which way?
Shaking his head, no.
Yes.
That's good. That's good then.
No.
The parking killed the last project and it sounds like we're right on the cusp of it, this project. And on the first floor, if he would put a restaurant in the first floor, is probably going to add a lot more cars to the area than we've talked about, then you have a problem. But it's just things that I want to bring up. And in construction, the pictures look pretty good on it. I like a lot of the masonry and such. And I'd like to know, is this going to be a building that's going to be in 20 years sagging at the knees, or is it going to be a building that's built well to last like 50 years, before we start having issues? Is it going to be wood frame construction, or is it going to be metal stud construction like you get in a commercial building? That makes a lot of difference in how things hold up. And at what I'm hearing now and Mr. Gill's presentation, I don't think he's ready yet. I think there was a lot of ifs, ands, and buts, and yeah, I could do this, but I think he needs to listen to what you have to say or tell him, and if it's up or down, vote. And come back with a better presentation to us. I think there was just a lot of what I've heard, a lot of things that are really open, and I'm not doing I don't want the project. I think the project would fit there well, but I want it to be built right and built for duration for the future. So it's not 20 years later, an eyesore, because you can build one of these buildings well and it'll stand the test of time, or you can do it in other ways. And in 20 years, nobody wants to buy it, and it's going to cost a lot to fix it up. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if we could go to the lady on the line, I did not see who was speaking, but we'd absolutely welcome her comments.
Hi, my name is Kelly Shores. I'm with Restoration Counseling. We're at 314 Elm Street, just north of the proposed project. I had a couple of concerns. One, I want to echo the concerns that have already been stated about parking. The parking on Elm is limited. And my concern would be people trying to use our parking lot for overflow parking, which I know you all can't control. But when you're talking about having the residential or the apartment complexes and retail space in there, it just feels like the parking is really tight, which I know has been expressed by multiple people here, just to echo that. My other major concern is the blocking off of the alleyway, which I understand from discussion tonight that was brought about by concerns about residents. However, when we built our project last year, we were told that we have to direct traffic through our parking lot from Elm Street out through the back alleyway. So blocking off this the alleyway from the apartment complex would prevent us from being able to access Broadway from where our parking, where we're required to direct traffic through our parking lot. Would then still be sending traffic out back north in the alleyway, which is what you're trying to avoid with this. So I'm concerned about that and what that will, the impact that will make on our business. So those are my only concerns. Otherwise, I think it looks like a great project.
All right, thank you very much. Any others like to speak for or against the proposal tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move to government officials in the crowd. All right,
Well, come on down.
come on. Yeah, come on up. Make yourself at home.
So you won't be asking the town for any money to complete the project? Oh,
Can you say and spell your name just for the record?
oh, Becky Davis, town council member.
Thank you.
Can he talk? Yeah, you can talk.
Oh, okay.
So you're not gonna be asking for any money from the town. You're gonna fund this project completely. You'll be paying taxes at the commercial rate.
Yes, ma'am.
Would that be 2% for the apartments and 3% for the commercial retail, Adam? The tax?
Yeah, I'm certainly no expert on
Okay.
taxation, but I would say this is that, don't forget the east building would be, even though it's live work, and there's a work component on the first floor, that would probably be assessed as multifamily entirely. So that would be what, the 2% for that.
Uh-huh.
And then for the other building, I'm assuming it would be 3% on the retail and then 2% on the apartments.
Okay. Do you have any other of these? Uh-huh.
No.
This will be your
Yes,
first.
it will be first, but
Okay.
we used, lawyers, civil engineers that were all very, very well versed in the project. I've been in real estate over 8 years. So I've helped develop a ton of sites,
Okay,
but this will be the first project.
okay. Do you have any idea what the rentals on these apartments will be, what the rents will be?
Estimated, right?
Uh-huh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Estimate that,
Okay,
garage spaces doesn't. We have a good idea of what the market can bear once the other apartments open, they're gonna open much. We
how long do you think it'll get? If you get approval, how long do you think it'll take you to build?
I mean, it's water, because they're gonna use two caps that went into. So we would have to wait for that, but, you know, we'll develop and I'll move as quickly as humanly possible.
You own the property now, correct?
I do.
Okay. And you say the 3 big rooms would be approximately how much more than the?
3, 4. Yes.
Okay. I think that's the biggest part of my questions. Thank you. Thanks. You know, I don't want to see our Broadway become like it is when you drive down through Fishers. You feel like you're in a tunnel because you've got all these 3-story buildings just everywhere. Now, I'm not expecting that in my lifetime because of all the businesses down there, but I don't see a problem. I think the building's a little plain looking. I don't know what you do to spruce it up, but But yeah, that's my only concern. So I don't want to see our Broadway become like you drive down through Fishers and you feel like you're in a tunnel.
They're the reason that we decided to do 2 buildings instead of just one, because I'm missing 3 apartments there. that I could
Okay.
have,
Just-
right? But we wanted to break it up. We
Mhm.
wanted to fit Fortville. We wanted to be pretty.
Okay,
So we're trying. We really are
yeah,
intentions.
I can tell. Yeah, you're gonna be willing to work with. What's the reasoning for them vacating that alley, Adam? Is that for?
Sure.
So they'll have
Well,
more parking, or is that?
So
NDOT?
for the alley vacation, they've posed it, not formally. There is a process that they have to go through. I believe that requires either plan commission and or town council approval for that. If there are a couple things. First, if there are any utilities in that alley, we'd have to at least have an easement for that going over the newly created private property.
Mhm.
So we have, the project could still potentially function even if the alley was on paper. And it's still public land, but there's pros and cons. I think the one advantage to vacating at least that little piece on their property, near their property, is that it would all be one taxable parcel. There's no more public land through there,
Mhm.
and it's private property. So
And I saw where you might have a little green space. What if people with children rent these apartments? You know, that might be a concern if they're trying to play in the parking lot, if there's not an area for them to play.
Oh.
Yeah. No.
Address as well was she's saying we should leave that open a little bit. I think the concern becomes you're gonna have kids, right? And you're gonna have young adults that are trying to cut through there, avoid traffic. I think it's much safer, and I mean, I'll leave it up to you guys, but I think it's much safer if we block that off and make sure folks aren't cutting from my property across to her property to get out and back through people. I think it's much safer to cut that off, so there's no, hey, I can zoom through here. That's my thought.
So can we continue that? Can I have you come back up, and if there's any rebuttal response to any of the concerns you heard, if there's anything else you want to address, I know you just brought that up. So
Yeah.
if there's anything else.
No, just to address, we're not trying to be vague. We're not trying to, this is an accurate depiction of what we want these buildings to look like, the materials that we want these to be. But we want it to be workable. I didn't want to come in here and say to anybody, this is what it is, live with it, right? I want to be workable. I want to have conversation with Mr. Beatson, and I will, about what we need this to look like. I don't want to be a problem here. I want to, at the end of the day, you guys are going to have to work with somebody at this project, right? It's either going to be somebody like me, or it's going to be somebody that forces things down your throat, and you're going to have to live with it. But my project fits everything that you guys asked, and we put a lot of damn work into making sure we did that. So that's all I got.
I have one more question. Just talking about the kids, as Becky brought up. Do you have a storage place for like bicycles?
Yeah,
I didn't see that in here.
Adam, on the west building, there was a place to have a bicycle rack to like lock into. The only concern about adding somewhere for kids to hang out here is if we don't cut this property off, the amount of traffic you're going to bring from other neighboring just people that are going to be on not only Kelly's property, but then using this space. And then we're talking about more traffic, right? So in an attempt to not have that, yeah, it'll be nice green space, but hopefully it's places that our residents can sit and maybe barbecue versus, having a bunch of kids playing.
But how does that address her ingress egress that she currently has going on?
If we
right
cut
now?
off the alleyway like we want to, we'll be able to put our dumpster there And then we can stop people from going north and we can stop people from cutting off with a simple fence.
I believe she said that they utilize that alley to direct their traffic to Broadway. Is that correct? Is that what? she
Yeah, but
said?
they're coming south on that alley to go to Broadway, in my opinion, and I'm not, Kelly, I'm not trying to hurt your business whatsoever, but her folks should be going to Elm Street and coming back to go to Broadway. I don't think there's any reason for them to cut through my property and go to Walnut or come down that alley and use the right in, right out.
Can I
She
speak
said
to that?
Well, and to really quick, just to clarify, the portion that is in front of, the portion of the alley that's in front of Ms. Shore's property in the site plan is unaffected.
Right.
The only, he's talking about another proposal, but for what they're showing on the plan, the alley by her property stays put.
If Kelly's customers wanted to still go north on that alley, currently how this sits, they could still do that and go the back way towards Mr.
So
Brand's, make a right,
Just
make
to,
a left.
lastly, for me, just to be clear, the only portion that would be vacated is that portion south of Ms. Shore's property
Which I own.
on his, in which he owns both sides,
Both sides.
where the two buildings are.
Okay.
Planned.
Can I speak to that?
I think we moved past the public comment.
She's
rebutting what he's saying about her business, though. I think.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that why our traffic goes south on that alleyway to Broadway is because we were told when we built our parking lot, traffic had to flow one way through that parking lot. So if you close off that parking lot, traffic has to go through there, west, north, east, and up Elm to Broadway. So you're closing off our access, our direct access to Broadway. Does that make sense?
So I think she's accusing that closing off this alleyway would put her in violation of whatever rules she was required to follow.
So Adam, will we
Correct.
have to relook at her?
And what does the
Yeah.
town attorney say to that?
Yeah, well, to clarify, if I remember correctly, on her property.
Right.
Because there's a garage, an old garage that's in the middle, is the travel lanes between the garage and that park, the
Oh.
south property line were pretty tight. And so in order to meet the minimum lane width, it got converted to one-way flow through there. But the alley is technically two ways, I believe. I don't know if it's restricted one way or the other, but I guess to what Gil is saying about closing the alley behind her house, it's not something that we've considered as part of this request. So that'd have to be a different discussion, I think, if he wanted to do that in the future, but.
Quick question, Adam. So was there a legal restriction on the one-way access? Because that's private property, right? That's driveway. Could that not be reverted to two-way access for her business? It's only wide enough for one direction, but if you're.
I think-
This is not a high
Yeah,
intensity use,
right.
right? We're not dealing with
Right.
people coming and going.
I think potentially we could have that discussion if she was comfortable with that. Sure. But it was simple in that at the time that property went through it's in order for the code, for it to be a two-way lane. It has to be a certain amount, but potentially you could seek,
Because it's
you could seek
commercial
relief on it. Right, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it looks like we can go back and revisit this particular nuance of it to make sure that not only is she in keeping with what she needs to do, but it also would work with the traffic.
Yeah,
flow
simply
coming
put,
back.
just to wrap up that
Yeah,
topic, if you're inclined, is the plan that's before you tonight does not impact the alley behind her business whatsoever. If they wanted to present that, they wanted to do an amended site plan to do that, then that would be a big enough change that it would have to go back through this body.
sure. I know.
Always time for you.
Tanya Davis, Fortville Council, and 402 East Mill Street. The only thing I could think maybe you could change, it does follow the comprehensive plan on the exterior, I talked about this with you. Would be maybe to, a little more dimension. Not so much change in materials, but a dimension like the front here that's maybe bring it out a little bit more or recess the other a little bit more. Because even in the comprehensive plan, it shows a little bit more of a elevation change might be enough to make it look not so containery as you put it. And also, something else that we didn't talk about, are these have elevators in them or staircase? Staircase, both of them are staircases. Okay. That was my only other question. Everything else looks pretty good. No, I don't hate it now.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Any other questions or clarifications before we move on from the council or from the commission, excuse me? Give us a raise. With that, I'd like to request a motion from the commission to approve with commission conditions or deny this case. And we've got 4 before us.
All right. I have a comment before we do that. I think if we are unsure about the elevations, which is what I keep hearing, I'm not sure how that translates into approving or denying the site, landscape, and lighting, because they kind of all play together. I am a little concerned about the elevation to mainly that second building, the east building. So that's just kind of my comment on that.
Do we make a motion then, or do we have a discussion before we make motion?
I think we need, let's
Okay.
make a motion and then we'll have discussion.
Okay, question before we make the motion then. Can we make individual motions on these
Yeah.
plans?
So,
Yes.
Okay, then, and can we wrap some of that in, like if I can tie it all together? Because like I will make a motion now to table the site plan and the building elevations while we motion to approve the landscape and lighting. If that's allowed, I'm not trying
Can we
to.
do them one at a time?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay.
So, okay, then I motion to table the site plan and building elevations and approve the landscape and lighting plan.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, now we're open for discussion.
my concern with that only is if there's a substantial enough change on the site and elevations, now we're locked into a landscape and lighting plan that may not match the site and the elevations.
Are we truly talking just elevations and some aesthetics? Because will that truly impact the site plan itself? We're not talking about changing the building.
It's not going to, it probably will not impact the footprint of the building, which then would not impact the landscape. It probably won't impact the lighting or the types of lighting. So good point. Yes, I would agree.
So if, I guess that would be my question is it seems like there's some resounding concern over the elevations and just where they're at today. But the rest of them seem like they're outside of maybe some parking concerns that I've heard, that there's not as much concern there.
I guess I'm not as concerned about the parking because it does fit our design standards, and we've used these design standards over and over for other buildings.
Yeah, we can't change our design standards.
Which I did verify the last, was it not Ridgeview East? Was it Ridgeview? I think it was Ridgeview.
Yeah.
They adhered to the 1.5. That's what,
And I think the concerns about businesses, I mean, the market, if I owned a restaurant, I would not seek out that space. Or
Right.
I'd be out of business in a month. You know, the market is going to drive who is going to be in these apartments. If you have 5 kids,
I agree.
you're not going to seek out this apartment. I mean, the market's going to drive who comes to this apartment and
Sure.
who both living and the commercial part of it as well. I would be okay. I would like to approve the concept site plan today as well, personally.
So we have a motion and a second. I think we have to vote on that as stated before. If, before we can move on to a potential different solution.
Could Jason amend his motion?
Alex?
I would just vote,
Oh, just to, okay.
vote it up or down.
Any other discussion before we vote? Anyone else want to chime in as currently stated?
Well, I would just like to point out, and I believe Adam brought this up. If we say yes to the site plan here, they're gonna expect them to adhere to this somewhat, so there might be some slight design changes, but I think that we can trust that those are gonna be handled properly, or they'll end up back here
Back.
for our council. So I think we should all keep that in mind as well. I mean,
Good point.
we have a owner that has done absolutely everything that we have laid out in our comprehensive plan. So I think it's really difficult to say nay to something that we've already, said, hey, it meets our standard.
Sure.
So I just wanted to.
Jason, was
One
your-
just legal point for you to consider, and you've all touched on this. If it's meeting the parking requirements that are in the design standards in our zoning code now, they get the benefit of that. To the extent there are concerns that we need to take a look at as where the town is now, growth, different areas, and perhaps amend that, that concern cannot apply to this petition. They get the benefit of our design standards and zoning code as they are in our books at the time they file their application. So we can't hold them to yeah, we know it's a standard, but we would like to see more spaces, or we would like to see, X, Y, Z, even though you checked all the boxes that we have on the books to require. So some of the things are discretionary, and Adam went through that, you've been discussing them, but for some of these harder pieces, parking and so forth, if they're meeting the standards that we've got on the books, they've checked that box.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification.
Are there differences between retail required spaces and living required spaces? Because parking for residential is 1.5, but are there different requirements for retail? Because he hasn't
Yes.
specified what retail is going to go in there. And I mean, we can't force him to.
I think Adam, is that in the presentation?
It
Yeah,
is.
that's what I thought.
So
There's a-
as pointed out, the site plan that they presented, it was showing 100 square feet on 167 on. And the important thing that came out of this meeting is that that's per floor. So it does change the parking calculations a little bit. I ran them, is that at a minimum, I think they'd need to have, it was like 9 spaces plus. If we did 1.5, because basically the retail number went up a little bit for what they would be required to have. So if we did, let's see, 1.5 times 21. So they'd have to have 32 for the apartments, okay? And then at 5,100, we divide that by 300.
Why are you using 5,100?
So if we go back to the 5,100, let's go back to the site plan there. How much retail is on the first floor? It is 1,750. Okay. So the 5,100 is the total square is what?
So you've got parking.
I don't want.
So, yeah, so the 5,100 is the total building size? Or is that per? It's actually per floor, because I did the math. So the 1,700 is incorrect. So it's 5,100 per floor. So for the retail, it would bump that up. So you'd have to have 9, I think I calculated it earlier in the meeting when they were talking, you'd have to have 9 spaces at a minimum for that retail. At a maximum, it could be much higher. So
didn't you
but then the
say
code
it was like a
allows for a
20%
20% parking reduction for shared parking. So I think, I would say I'm comfortable with the amount of parking they have. It's going to be tight, no doubt. But based on the formulas that are in the code, I do think you have some discretion on that. If you believe that there needs to be more parking, they can provide more parking that's still within the code, if that makes sense, and say that we don't agree with the shared parking in this particular use. So my advice is that you do have some discretion on that one way or the other.
The 20% is overall total parking. So
Right.
we need 41 spots if we go 32 and 9 at a minimum, and we could reduce that by 20%.
Correct.
So that puts us at 32.8, 33 spots.
Which is what they had, 30, yeah.
So from that perspective, they meet the requirement.
Yeah.
And according to Alex, we are,
Pretty bound to
that's-
the design standard.
that's kind of an open and shut case, I think. Based on if that's the calculation that we're to assume.
Right.
I have,
So did we vote?
No, we have not yet.
one other thing is, has that, or is this gonna come back to us, the alley, vacating the alley? Is, because if that does not get vacated, will he lose his parking underneath the building there? Or?
No, the alley vacation would have no effect on parking. In fact, they might actually gain a space if it is vacated. But only one space. I would say.
Ultimately, the alley and whether to vacate that or not, that is completely a town council issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So we have a motion.
I think, yeah,
for-
we've got a motion to table both the site plan and elevation and approve the landscape and lighting plan. Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh. Okay. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstain?
No, I refuse.
No, you're sustained.
We've got a 3-3 split. Motion doesn't carry. So I think we're back to the drawing board.
So we can make another motion.
We can, yes.
I would like to make a motion to approve case number STP -01 2023 as presented. Both the concept site plan, elevations, landscaping and lighting plan.
And I'll second that motion.
All right, any discussion?
Hmm. I'm just torn on the elevations, just a smidge. You're saying if we approve it, they have to stick as close to what we've just approved? Or it comes
Correct,
back?
correct.
There were some good comments about, dimension offsets, which I don't know if that's considered substantial or if that would be considered minor.
One thing, just for advice
Yeah.
on the elevations issue is, from a professional perspective, I'd be okay with that brown brick that was shown. But one easy thing that they might be able to do that is a little bit more in keeping with Fortville is simply do some red brick. That's more traditional.
It's not on the look of it. I have no problem with it. I think it looks nice. What I'm concerned about is building the east building. When he said their work live, and Jason brought up that right now there's all glass on the front, and that's going to substantially change. How does that impact? We have to have X number of glass on the lower level.
It is a great question. Um,
That's my sticking point.
yeah.
Not the look of the building. I don't have an issue with any of that or the
Would that be
Again,
a
materials.
substantial change that would come back?
Well,
before?
the other option is you could do, approval on the west building and then table the east building until that's fleshed out a little bit more.
Are the glasses, are they inset on the building end or are they flush with? Inset.
Because it has to meet the design standards, correct? I mean,
Right.
and right now, the way it sets, it meets design standards. But if what you just said, that they may be more just windows and stuff, if it doesn't meet design standards, then it has to come back to us anyway, correct?
Yes. Correct.
So basically, if they decide to change the front side of that building, then it comes back to us.
If it's substantial enough of a deviation.
Besides if that's substantial though, like where is that? Is that your
I do.
decision?
Yeah.
So it's not the commission, it's you.
Well, I decide if it's substantial, is it in substantial conformance? And so I always do err on the side of caution in terms of, we have a board, we have talented folks on the board, and it went through a public process. And so that's one of the reasons that we have this to begin with in Fortville is basically a design review board so that it is open to the public. So I do err on the side of caution on that.
Okay.
I think like Tanya said, if you did a build out on it, it would look a lot different. And if you set the glass back in, change the elevation of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not.
We also have to keep in mind, these are concept plans. I mean, as far as like, these aren't actual architectural measurements and all that. Sure.
Okay.
All right, any other comments, questions before we take a vote?
That's what we have, is a 0 set. I built it. If you had said this needs to be a 2-foot setback, we wouldn't have did it that.
Yeah.
But you said a 0 setback and a 15-foot setback, and we did that.
Okay. All right, well, we'll move to vote. All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstain?
Me.
All right, case carries with a 4-2 vote for approval of all 4. And that is our only case for the night. I thank you all for coming out tonight. Before we adjourn, any board comments, questions for the public? No, I just want to state that we're working on providing these materials out in a more consistent and concise manner, getting them out on social media ahead of time. So look on the official Facebook page, look on the website. We want to make sure that you all are seeing these things ahead of time and you know what to be coming to represent. So that should be coming out this month. But with that, just wanted to make mention of that. Got nothing else? I look for a motion to conclude.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 8:06 PM.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Carries. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Alex.
Have a good night.
All right.
Next time I have to bring
All right.
sidebar.